Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Today I'm going to answer a question that comes up frequently. What is a donor reel? And why would I want to get one of them versus buying the parts and so on? And today's a good example. So Joe in Florida sent me in this beautiful Daiwa 4000C reel. The only problem is that it's got an oscillating gear that's missing a couple of teeth. Now you can't see it here, but I did take it apart and did complete the initial diagnosis. So what you get is you get a skip every now and then. Under load, you get a skip in the up and down movement of the spool. Well, the reel has been out there for 30 years now, 35 years. According to Joe, this belongs to the father of a friend, and he would like to see this one go fishing again, and he would like to have it restored as close as possible. So we got two issues here. We got a floppy kind of a anti-reverse that's probably a spring on the override, and we've got an oscillating gear that's missing some teeth. So your first thought is to go out and see if parts are readily available. Well, they're not. And when you try to figure out what's the next best thing often is a donor reel. Even though you may pay a little bit more than what you would pay for the particular part that you need, in this case an oscillating gear, but also probably a spring on the override of this one, it starts to add up, and then you start to look at the advantages. Do you want to keep a reel like this going for a long time, or do you just want to decide that it's not worth repairing? Well, in this case, the reel is in very good condition, and it's ready to go fishing, except that it's had a failure of a part over time. So the alternative was to go look for a donor reel, and I was fortunate enough to find one. Now, they're not cheap, right? In this case, it's not cheap. Some cases, they're very cheap. But in the case of the Daiwa 4000C, it's a popular series. The 4000 and the 7000 often command upwards of $100. So this one was available. It was available for $35. Now, that may or may not sound like a lot, but when you need a reel and you need one that's you want to keep one restored that is worth $100 or so, then it's probably worth the investment to go ahead and chase those parts. What makes it a donor reel? Well, first of all, it's the condition of the reel. The reel has seen better days. You can see the spool is pretty scraped up. It hasn't gone fishing in quite some time. The line is old. The drag adjuster knob up top there is broken off. Now, you can still do that with a wrench. You can tighten it, but certainly under stress, if you're fighting a fish, you're not going to have a wrench in your pocket to go ahead and tighten it down. So that's kind of a set it and forget it kind of a drag there. But other than that, the reel is working. Now, you also here and there that the bearing is kind of gone, right? So you take a look at it and you say, well, what is it that I need? What can I use? And then how do I make a determination as to whether it's worth purchasing this as a donor reel? So let's go over what you can use, what's the good parts, what's the bad parts. So by ear, I know that the bearing's bad. Well, that's okay. If you're rebuilding one of these reels, you probably want to install a new bearing anyway. But the handle is functional, and these things have a tendency to break. Now, it's not as pretty as the one he has, but it's not bad to have a backup handle to it. It is spinning properly, and you can notice that we do have a good oscillation gear now, which is what this is all about. So I know that the oscillation gear is good. The spool is beat up, but it's in round and it's spooling properly. So a spare spool is not a bad idea. Particularly, Joe had mentioned he's down in Florida. He goes through grouper and other things. It wouldn't be bad to spool one with braid and spool another with mono. And it's a quick change spool, not if you don't have a spool adjuster. It's not a quick change, but in this case we have the spool adjuster, or the drag adjuster, and so you just pop one off, pop one on. Fish aren't going to care what that spool looks like, and it's always nice to have a change of line if you decide to go for something different. You could overload. Joe said he likes to fish with very heavy line. In this case, this reel will take 25-30 pound monofilament. It'll take 60 pound braid. So it's not a bad idea. Also, the other parts that are going to get harder and harder to find are the bail. And in this case, this bail is shaped well. The bail spring assembly, those do break over the course of use. And you've got a main gear in here that seems to be working properly. You've got an axle shaft that's going to work. So there's a lot of good pieces and parts in this reel, even though cosmetically it's a pretty horrible looking reel. So let's just take this off, see what was going on inside here. And a lot of times folks give up on these reels either because they can't find the piece and part, or they just don't want to make an investment in the pieces and parts that are needed in order to keep a reel like this functioning properly. But to talk about functioning properly, I want to take a moment, it's a good segue, take a moment to thank our first responders and essential personnel as I pull off the exterior pieces on this. We really do appreciate everything it is that you're doing during this pandemic to keep everybody safe and to restore them to health if they've contacted the disease, and to make sure that life goes on as close to normal as possible. And what is that close to normal? Well, it involves our supply chains, our educational systems, our transportation systems, the teachers, the transport employees, the folks that are delivering our groceries and the net essential goods and the like. Thank you for all it is that you're doing. Your efforts truly are appreciated. Well, this in one look here will give us a good idea of what's going on. And I also have to take this apart anyway because I'm going to pull that oscillation gear out. I'm going to clean it up, and I'm going to make sure that that Joe's reel is ready to go there. So always good to do preventive maintenance on reels. Joe sent this one in before he was ready to take it fishing. As I mentioned, a friend of his, it was their dad's, and the dad or the friend wanted to make sure that it kept fishing. Well, you can see another thing that was going on here. This reel had not been serviced in a long time, but just a quick visual on this donor reel says that all of the teeth are in its right place. Nothing's gotten knocked out. We're going to clean this one up. We're going to make sure Joe has a spare because, again, these are hard to find pieces, and the pieces alone are worth more than what the cost of this reel was. Probably should have put a glove on because the reel by itself is pretty nasty here. But I want to get to the one that really matters, and that's the oscillation gear. To do that, I'm going to remove the screw from the crosswind block. And I'm putting all my pieces and parts into a parts tray, and in this case they're not going to be reinstalled. They're simply going to be passed along to Joe in case he needs any of this stuff. Pull the spool and the axle shaft, and that came out pretty easy. And here's another case where mine got some oil wrap in there. But the axle shaft is always a good thing. These things can bend from time to time. This is nice and clean. So the excess grease has probably helped keep it that way, although it's probably bogged down the performance of the reel. And here's the pieces that are needed. Here's your crosswind block and your crosswind gear. And they seem to be in pretty good condition. So I'm going to remove that. I'm going to check for teeth. There's some surface discoloration, a little bit of wear on the coating, but the teeth themselves are in a whole lot better position than the one that's in that beautiful reel over there. And that's why you would use a donor reel. So your donor reel, when you make a consideration in terms of should I buy the whole reel or should I just buy the parts, what we've learned here is, in this case, this is a good investment for them. Like I said, I think it was $35 with the shipping. All of the teeth are in the right places. The gear is solid. It's got a little discoloration, but it will be able to be used. That will restore full functionality to the nice reel. We've got a backup main gear. We've got a backup axle shaft. We've got a spare spool we can load with different line. We've got a good pinion gear on here from what I can tell. What I haven't been able to look at, and what we don't need to do during this series, pulling this out, the bearing is shot. And Joe had asked me, does this make sense to rebuild this reel? Well, no, it doesn't, because of the missing pieces and parts, the drag knob, the general condition of the reel, and so on. It doesn't make sense, but it does make sense to hold these pieces and parts, make sure that that 4000C is going to be running for a long time to come. So that answers, I hope that answers the question, what is a donor reel? When does it make sense to purchase a donor reel? And what are some of the things you should look for in a donor reel? And of course, the main answer is make sure that it has the part that you need In this case, the part that we needed was the oscillation gear, but make sure that you can get as many salvageable parts out of this should the need arise to go ahead and have to use one to keep another reel working. This case is in solid condition. If for some reason he broke the handle off of the reel, this could be substituted. They're not pretty cosmetically, but the rotor is in good condition. The bail is salted, but it does go up and down. This is a hammer bail, right? So I call them a hammer bail. It's going to hammer over here and it's going to trip, and that will work. And the spring inside of it's good. So overall, it's a good purchase if you intend to keep a reel fishing, and these 4000 Cs are worth keeping fishing. So I hope you've enjoyed that little answer to a viewer question, and I hope that if you have a need for one, that you're able to find a donor reel for the particular reel that you have, and that you keep it fishing, giving it a second chance. So this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Have a great day.